Paul came to Thessalonica on his second missionary journey. Now, he would have traveled along a road called the Via Egnatia. This was a Roman road that ran from modern-day Turkey in the east to the western coast of Greece. Coming from Philippi to Thessalonica, Paul would have entered into the Calamari Gate, which is on the east side of the city. On the west side of the city, where Paul would have exited when he left for Berea, there was another entry point, and it was called the Vardar Gate. Inside the arch of this gate was an inscription, which lists the names of several civic officials who were called politarchs. Now you can see the inscription here, and there are 6 politarchs named, along with the treasurer of the city and the director of higher education. The stones from the Vardar Gate were actually reused in a construction project in 1876. But before the arch was taken apart, the Reverend Peter Crosby, who was a Scottish minister living in Thessaloniki at the time, worked with the British consul to move the inscription to the consulate. Eventually, it was moved to the British Museum, and it's actually on rotating display there even today. This inscription references the politarchs of the city of Thessalonica, and this may sound like just one more foreign word and just one more inscription that describes political position from antiquity, but it's actually far more significant than that. And let me tell you why. There's only one place that we find this term used in all of the literary sources we have from history. And it's Luke in the book of Acts. He uses the term politarch to describe the city leaders of Thessalonica. Okay, now to be fair, we do have one other mention of this term by a historian named Tacitus, but the way he uses the term politarch is so different than that of the New Testament, it's not considered by scholars to be the same. The word politarch shows up as well after the time of the Apostle Paul. However, all of these references are actually church fathers who are referencing Acts 17, written by Luke. So for a long time, scholars asked a lot of questions about this. They wondered, did Luke coin the term? If not, where did it come from? And why would Luke have used this word to reference the city leaders? Some scholars even doubted Luke's historicity and expressed skepticism about his authorship of the book of Acts and the sources that he used. Well, let's take a look at Acts 17, 1-9, where we see Luke use this term. When Paul and his companions had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days, he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I am proclaiming to you is the Messiah, he said. Some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a large number of God-fearing Greeks and quite a few prominent women. But other Jews were jealous, so they rounded up some bad characters from the marketplace, formed a mob, and started a riot in the city. They rushed to Jason's house in search of Paul and Silas in order to bring them out to the crowd. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some of the other believers before the city officials. And you can see this term here is bolded because this is the term politarchs used by Luke. And they were shouting, "These men have caused trouble all over the world and have now come here. And Jason has welcomed them into his house. They are all defying Caesar's decrees, saying that there is another king, one called Jesus." And when they heard this, the crowd and the city officials, there's the use of the word again, were thrown into turmoil. They made Jason and the others post bond and let them go. Since this inscription found in the Vardar Gate, almost 70 others have been discovered. We've even found an impression made on a seal, which contained the word politarch. What's interesting is that 80% of these inscriptions come from the region of Macedonia. This is the northern part of Greece and the province in which the city of Thessaloniki was situated. And 40% of all the politarch inscriptions that we have are from Thessaloniki itself. Archaeologists have located inscriptions in 2 other cities that are mentioned in the book of Acts, Amphipolis and Berea. Now, Amphipolis is where Paul passed through on his way to Thessalonica, as mentioned in the book of Acts. Berea is where he went immediately after he left Thessalonica. Of course, there are many other cities in Macedonia which are not mentioned in the New Testament where these Politarch inscriptions have been found. Dating these inscriptions is notoriously complicated. A lot of ink has been spilt over the matter of which decade they belong to. However, we do have a general time range, and it goes from the rule of Augustus, which is late 1st century BC, until the middle of the 2nd century AD. At least 4 of the inscriptions that we have for sure date to the 1st century AD. And one has even been located in Berea at the base of a statue of Claudius. Now, in case you're not up to speed on your Roman history, Claudius was emperor from 41 AD to 54 AD. So this situates the inscription exactly in the time frame of Paul's visit to Thessalonica and Berea. So when we take all the data together from the various inscriptions, here's what we know about the office of the Politarch. It was a 1-year term, which could be renewed. The Politarchs were civil magistrates. They had no military authority, actually. They typically came from the wealthy class. They were administrators, politicians. In some cities, the Politarchs had the authority to convene the city's assembly. They could mark the seal of the Politarch on decrees, and they even conveyed citizenship. They could introduce motions and decrees. They had judicial responsibility, and they were required to maintain peace and order in the city. Of course, it's possible that the responsibilities of the Politarch in different cities was not precisely the same as all the other cities. This is an aggregated picture, but it gives us an idea of what the Politarch does. And of course, the descriptions that we see here are attested to in the book of Acts. We see the judicial authority, the need to keep the peace, and other examples. With only a few exceptions, the Politarchs are always described in the plural. We only have one example of a single Politarch, someone who ruled by himself. In Thessaloniki, the number always ranges from 5 to 7, and it really depends on the inscription. We don't actually know why the number changed between 5 and 7, but some scholars have conjectured it's related to the financial responsibilities associated with the office. Like today, running for office could get really expensive. Unlike today, public servants were often expected to provide something out of their own pocket for the benefit of the city. So maybe you needed a group of people whose resources could be pooled together to meet that obligation. And maybe that number just differed from time to time. Pictured here is the Roman Forum of Thessaloniki, and you can see that there are 5 seats situated for the rulers to sit in. They're outlined by these stone boxes now to see where they were. All that to say, clearly Luke was accurate in using the term Politarch to describe the city leaders in Thessaloniki. It appears to be an office which was rather unique to the region, and especially characteristic of the city of Thessaloniki. If we didn't have the archaeological evidence, it would appear that Luke was mistaken or maybe just poorly informed. However, with the archaeological data in hand, it is clear that Luke was actually more in the know than most of the archaeologists and historians were for several centuries.